Hey guys, welcome back to Car Show and Tell. I'm your host, Tim the Toolman, and we're back again at the No Kill Car Shelter with Project Plastique. That's our 1987 C4 Corvette, and as promised, we're back to finish up those front brake upgrades. Got the parts I needed, the right rotors, so without further ado, let's get started. Alright. Let's walk over here. Now, have a look. At first you'll notice not much has changed since we did our front brake removal and cleaned up the wheel well and detailed it. I did remove the factory brake caliper and hose, and as you can see by the little red cap there, it's capped off so I'm not leaking brake fluid all over the place. So, got some parts ready. The stuff that I ordered came from Bear Brakes. I have used their Errataspeed rotors in the past with factory calipers. This is the first time I am using one of Bear Brakes calipers. And so this kit's a little bit different than the kit that they sell. I changed some things up a little bit in an attempt to try to pack these things under the stock 16-inch Corvette wheels, because I haven't explained it before, I've kind of got an unhealthy obsession with those wheels right there. I really like the way they look. I'm an original wheel nut, and I like to keep them on the car. So let me back up. I want to tell you this. I went on to Bear Brakes website and the Willwood website, and I did download the template for their front brake kit, and on the website it does state in no uncertain terms that this kit must be used with 17-inch or larger wheels. Challenge accepted. So I printed the template, scaled it to size, cut it out, backed it up with card paper, and held it up against the inside of one of my stock front wheels, and it looked like it was really, really close to fitting. Super close. So I decided I would take the plunge and order their 4-pot front brake kit. So I did, and I attempted to put it on the car, and the results were a bit disastrous. It didn't fit at all whatsoever. So it did fit radially inside the barrel of the wheel, but lots of contact between the caliper and the back side of the wheel face. So I took a step back, reanalyzed everything, and thought that I might be able to make a few changes to make this work without the use of wheel spacers, because I'm not particularly crazy about wheel spacers. So that being said, this is not the stock kit that they sell. If you want to replicate this kit, you're probably going to have to call Bear Brakes and tell them exactly what changes you want to make to this kit. Specifically, the rotors are the real only change. So the rotors included in the kit are a one-piece cast rotor with, I think, a 0.82 inch offset or back spacing, or whatever you want to call it, hub to rotor face measurement. And I looked at the kit on the car, and I decided that if I made a couple of changes, I could go with a rotor that had a 1-inch hat depth, is what they call it, hat depth. 1-inch hat depth from the wheel flange to the face of the rotor. So that's the change I made. I did order 2-piece rotors. It seemed to be the only ones that would work, and they're here. So we're going to go ahead and start slamming this together. Okay? I'll get you set up and follow along. So this is the caliper bracket that came with the kit. Ouch, my feet. That is the part number on the bracket. And there is another part number on the back side, if you can read that, 6600390-A-8524. I think both sides are the same. So, the kit instructions. If you follow the kit instructions, you're supposed to mount this to the front side of your front spindle. If I take this and move it around to the back side and I mount it using the supplied bolts and some .050 washers, what I wind up with is a caliper that's perfectly centered on a 1-inch hat depth rotor. So let me get my my thread locker, wherever that went. Come on. There it is. And we're going to mount this. Okay? Okay, I have some thread locker on a bolt. I have my spacer in between the bracket and the front spindle. I'm going to grab my bolt. It's going to go through the spindle from the front side, through our spacer, and I'm going to find that hole and I'm going to start working it into place. Okay, and I can swing this out of the way, insert another spacer in between there, thread lock my other bolt using copious goops of thread locking compound, and my spacer fell out. Yep. Let's try that again. 050 spacer in between, and there we go. Through the spacer and into the bracket. Those are snug. Put my locking thread locker away, and then you can use a 22 mil or a 7/8 inch socket. You want to set your torque wrench to 110 pounds and proceed to torque these bolts. There's one. Come on. Get a longer extension. Get a longer one. Take this one again. Okay. Those are on. The next order of business . Just wipe this down, get any dirt, dust, cobwebs, because it's been sitting a while. So I'm sure incidentally the battery on this thing's probably toast. I'll have to put the charger on it when it's time to put it on all four and fire it up. That's wiped. Let me get my rotor. Okay, here it is. I did wipe down the rotor surface with brake clean, not the hat, just the rotor surface. So, let me brush my hat down real quick, get all the shipping stuff off of it. Yeah, there we go. Part number on the hat, I think, is 61403255 A. Not so sure on the ring. 6910137. Minimum thickness on these is 25.9 millimeters. I think they're, I don't know what they are to start. They're 1.1 inch thick. Okay, which was what the thickness of the kit rotors that came with it was as well. So, I'm going to line that up. If you can, here we go. Slide that in place and hold that in place. Pardon me. I'm just going to put a spacer and a lug nut on here. There we go. Cinch this down. Okay? So, now we come to the fun part. Calipers. Even though I have spaced this caliper further away from the front side, or I should say from the back side of the wheel, it does still require some clearancing, unfortunately. And this one is going to still require more clearancing. This was my initial attempt at getting it to clear the wheel. Okay. This corner's got to come down more. This corner's got to come down more. And this corner's got to come down more. We're going to have to remove more material here, up to here, down into here, just to get this sucker to clear the inside of the wheel. So for right now, I'm going to show you this for mock-up purposes. Okay. As to the installation. However, later on this evening, I'm going to take it back off and do a bit more grindings and sandings. Okay, caliper does come preloaded with the stainless clips and the pads that you need. I will say this one might actually clear. It doesn't look too bad, but we'll find out. The one on the opposite side, which I've already done, this pad apparently sticks down far enough to contact the heads of these fasteners. And I had to grind the metal backer of this pad back far enough to get it to clear these rotors. Whether or not this side does the same thing yet is yet to be seen. I'll put the bolts to it and we'll find out. If I were mounting this permanently, I'd be thread locking these. I'd also set my torque wrench to 85 foot-pounds, which is what it takes. And yeah, I can already see these rotors come in contact with this pad. So, yeah, it's going to require some clearancing on the metal backer of that pad. But for right now, let's go over to the other side, which is done. And you might not know it because this side's already been refinished. All I did was masked it off and gave it a coating of caliper paint, but it's kind of difficult to tell. Come on, focus. How far down I clearanced this thing. Okay, down in through here has been ground and around here has been ground. Can't grind too far into this because I think that plugs the fluid passage. Up into here has been ground, okay, and rounded, made much more round than the way the caliper arrived from bare. And the same thing, of course, down here on the bottom side. It's all been ground to match. And then this has been repainted and properly mounted. With that pad ground, nothing hits. So there we have it. You cannot particularly see where I had to grind that pad, but I painted the bottom of it black again. But it's basically ground right up to the side of the pad material itself. So actually, I think what I'll do here for you is I'm going to grab another pad. Well, I'll grab the pad out of this rotor, or this caliper here, and I'm going to give that a quick grind and show you guys how much you got to take off of it. Alright, here's a fair visual representation of the grinding that I needed to accomplish on this pad. Focus. Okay. Stop. From there to there. You can tell it pretty much went right up to the edge of the friction material. And I guess I don't have to say this, but do try your best not to actually grind any of the friction material, you know? I only caught it a tiny little bit. And that line that you see through the friction material is actually where those bolts contacted it when I was trying to turn it. So, put a scratch in it. Oh well. So I'm going to touch that up where I ground. I ground it and I just touched it up with a file and a little sandpaper around the edges off. I'm going to touch that up with the black paint pen, and we're going to stick that back together. Okay, so pads are back in. Okay, caliper's back in place. We'll give it a spin, and we see no more contact between the rotor and the pad. Alright. Our caliper is mounted evenly, side to side, on our rotor. Right? So we got our proper caliper spacing. We got clearance between our rotor and our pads. Next thing we need to do is assemble our brake hose. So let me grab those parts. Alright, so we have our brake hose. That is brake hose part number. I believe it is the same part number for both sides of the front of the car. And it comes with our steel line to hose adapter, banjo bolts in the rest of the packing. I just happen to have another one of these around, a new brake line retaining clip, and our copper washers for our banjo bolt. So if you want to assemble this, all we have to do is put these two together. Okay, the large fitting is an 18 millimeter, small fitting is an 11 millimeter, and actually I don't know how the hell you're supposed to get this thing apart after you've put it together. Yeah, you can't really get the wrench off of there. So okay, poor design time. Let's get that out of there. Let me see if I have another 11 millimeter around. I don't. I have a 7/16. Will that work? Why, looky there. It works. I guess that's why it was left sitting around here. So, There we go. Thread these two together. Put our 18 on here. This might actually be a standard size fitting now that I feel that. Yeah, that's kind of loose. Let's see here. Let's try an 11/16. Oh yeah, like a glove. 11/16 works pretty well. Take our 7/16, right? And crank these down together. Till it don't want to go anymore. Okay. That's together. Alright. We're going to insert this into the chassis downward like so. And then our new brake line clip will go in like so. Above that ridge right there, which will stick down. And you're just going to take a hammer and lightly tap that into place, okay? Because this is slightly narrower than the brake line itself. So as you tap it on here, it's going to widen it out, and then it's going to snap over once it makes it past there. And you'll thread your fitting, your hard line into this fitting, tighten it up, back it up with a wrench up here when you tighten that hard line in. And then this line will get attached to our caliper via the banjo bolt. Okay? I'll show you that finished in a moment. Okay, so here we have our new brake line in place, mounted into the frame tab for our brake line. I haven't screwed the hard line into the adapter fitting yet. I'm leaving that off for bleeding purposes. I'm just going to bleed it right from that line. And there's our banjo fitting installed into our caliper on the other side. So, if I didn't say so before, the caliper fasteners, they're Allen head cap screws. They get torqued to 85 foot-pounds using thread locking compound. This one's not torqued at all. It's tightened, not torqued, simply because I know it's going to have to come off for more clearancing work before I can final fit the wheel and give it a shot. That said, let's go to the other side here. Since this caliper is done, what I'm going to do here is quickly install a wheel and let you guys see that. Okay, be right back. Okay, here we are. Got our wheel back in place. Got some lug nuts on, they're tight. And we can see our caliper in there. You can see the rotor down inside there. Okay, plenty of room between the rotor and the wheel. The caliper, not so much. It's tight, and when I say tight, I mean tight. I am going to say one thing. Well, I'll tell you what, let me give it a spin here so you can see. It's going around, and nothing's hitting that caliper. Exactly what I want. Now, that being said, it's still up in the air. What's going to happen when I put weight on it? That's anybody's guess. I might be rethinking this whole scheme. I do have somewhat of a contingency plan in place for that. And I know before I said I don't like wheel spacers. I really don't. Sometimes, though, they are a necessity. And when they are a necessity, I only use as much as I need. So, here's my contingency plan. I do have a pair of super thin 1/8 inch or 0.125 inch wheel spacers that I can employ if the need be. These are cheap. You can find them online. Plenty of vendors have them. 5 by 4 3/4 inch bolt pattern, standard, Chevy passenger car stuff. And they're waiting in the wings if I should need them. I will give you a couple of notes on clearancing calipers. Let me start off by seeing this. These brakes aren't cheap, okay? I stopped counting at 2,000, but I'm well over 2,000 into this. But if I do what I plan to do with this car, it's going to mean that I need to be able to get slowed down in a hurry. And you can't put a price on, safety, not being, into the wall when you don't want to be into the wall. I'd much rather spend the money on brakes, even if they're a bit monstrous, and even if they're going behind stock wheels. So I really just love the look of this car. Also, I chose to do this because I enjoy what you might call understated cars. Not that the Corvette is necessarily understated, but that's sort of the essence of hot rodding, I guess, is taking something demure and making it capable of performing above and beyond what it otherwise was once capable of. That is the basis for choosing to do why I did what I did. If you get the stock kit and you have upgraded wheels and you like upgraded wheels, slam it on. You're not going to have any problems. If you're as strange as I am, and I'm strange, you do things like this. We'll see how it works out. Let me get back to clearancing. Modeling clay was my friend, so that's what I used. Gobbed some modeling clay on there, and then as carefully as I could, hefted a wheel and tire into place and slid it straight back towards the hub and mooshed the modeling clay out of the way until the tire or the wheel came into contact with the caliper. Okay? After it was mooshed, I could take that wheel off and I could see what portion of the caliper was coming into contact with the barrel of the wheel. Remove the clay, make some preliminary markings, think it over, come up with an idea, a plan of what material to remove and from where, and then execute and try again, going a little bit at a time, a little further, a little further, a little further, taking off only as much as I really needed to or thought I needed to. I didn't go whole hog and start hacking big chunks of this caliper away. Okay, started small, worked my way up, kept removing material until I got to a point where the wheel fit. Once I got to that point, I wanted to have a margin of safety there, at least a small margin of safety. So I went just as much further as I dared, taking more material away to increase that space or that gap between the wheel and the caliper. Okay? Most of that work was accomplished with a grinder, a large bench grinder, smoothed it out with my handheld grinder with a grinding wheel, and then switched to a flap wheel, sanded it with the flat wheel, or smoothed it out a bit better with the flat wheel, and then moved to hand files. If you're not very good at making compound curves with a flat hand file, you're going to get a lot of practice. But it can be done. You can make nice compound curves with a hand file. Finish that off with some regular old sandpaper. Got a hair in my eye. Finish that off with sandpaper. Once I was happy with the final shape, taped off the parts that I didn't want to get a ton of sand into. Taped that all off, gave it a trip through the sandblasting cabinet. If for no other reason than to finish rounding everything off and give everything a nice uniform finish with a little bit of mechanical tooth to it. Once that was done, gave the caliper a good wiping down, a good cleaning with some alcohol, cleaned it off, prepped it to apply that caliper paint. So we'll see, hopefully it sticks. It's got a good toothy surface to the aluminum. So I didn't blast off all of the original powder coating. I just feathered the edges, okay, around where I had ground. After I had blasted it, I feathered the edges with sandpaper. Gave it a, well, no, I feathered the edges first, then I gave it the blast. Then I painted it, well, cleaned it and painted it. So that's that. Okay, so we shall see how this goes. One other thing. Wheel weights. If you have stick-on wheel weights, okay, if they're back in the rim pretty far, chances are they're not going to clear that caliper. So you're going to have to stick them kind of further outboard here in this flat spot just inside of these vents. That's a good place to put them. They're out of the way of that caliper, and you'll get perfect clearance for those wheel weights there. Don't worry if you see them. They're really going to be hard to see in there. You might not even notice them as this goes around. I don't even hardly notice them as this goes around. So you're not going to have any trouble balancing that wheel. It's going to work out fine. One other thing I guess I'm afraid of or thinking of at the moment. I did, if you go back and you watch the other videos, we did put brand new wheel bearings in this thing. With the proximity of the caliper to the inside of this wheel, if you got a bad wheel bearing or a loose wheel bearing, chances are you're going to know it. If one of these wheel bearings, these new ones, goes bad, I'm probably going to know it pretty quick. And I'm probably not going to be able to limp the car home to do the repairs. It's going to get stopped where it's at, and a rollback's going to get called. And it's going to have to get drug home on a rollback for that. Okay? So like I said, there's just super tight clearance. I'm not sure if it's even 1/8 of an inch or 1/10 of an inch maybe. I might have that much if I'm lucky. One thing I should have done was model clayed this thing and then stuck another wheel on once I was done, but I haven't done that. I might do that. We'll see if I get the time to do that. I do have some other little issues I'm working this car over before I go to bleed the brakes. So that's going to be in the next video installment. Because I did go ahead and I did get some good brake fluid, and this car when I bought the car a year ago, I did go through it and change all the fluids out with fresh stuff, to include the brake fluid. The brake system was all bled down, and then fresh fluid was applied, and I ran the car for about a year with fresh fluid in it. That being said, the old fluid that came out was black as night. It was in horrible shape. So let me turn this around. That's the color of the fluid now, after a year. That was fresh fluid a year ago. So, and I've lost a lot from having the brake lines open now. But in the course of a year of circulating fresh brake fluid through this thing, that's how much more additional dirt and whatever gunk it flushed out of the lines in this thing. So yeah, I'm hoping a second, and you really should flush the brakes when you do something like that, but I'm praying, you know, really thinking that a second flush here, just evacuate everything like I did the first time, and then suck all new fluid through each corner, and we'll see how things look after that. Okay, well, that'll be the next time. So I'm going to sign off for now. Oh, one other thing. There's the stock front brake calipers. Don't throw them away yet. If you're interested, I have another idea I'm working on. I'm still working through it. I've still got more research to do. But I have an idea, and I think we might, at least I might, be able to repurpose those. These rear calipers, if we go over here, that's our wimpy rear caliper. That's the size of the brake pad. Okay, I'll give you something to reference that. Just a standard wrench. That's the size of the brake pad. I don't even think that's 4 inches long. It's small. And then we did go through the rear brakes and redo them with power stop stuff. And that was cheap. You know, what I would call a minor upgrade, very minor. I have some other ideas I'm working on. We might be able to repurpose those front calipers as rear calipers, utilizing some other brake rotors. So stay tuned. We'll see where this awful idea leads. So till then, if you've watched this far, let me know what you think of this idea. I'm interested in other people's opinions of it. If you think it's a good idea, if you think it's a bad idea, let me know. I'm not even sure if it's a good idea or a bad idea yet, but we'll find out. If it's a bad idea, hopefully I didn't throw a ton of money away. Hopefully I can figure out a solution to make it work. If it's a good idea, then hey, all the better. But yeah, feel free to like and subscribe. That would help me out a lot. And like I said, let me know in the comments what you think. Well, that's it for today. Hope you guys learned something. What to do or what not to do. I'm Tim the Tool Man. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.